Okay, hello everyone. I'm gonna hope that this works. I know this is not like the best setup for the presentation, but we're gonna roll with it because this is what my computer is capable of. So we're going with it. This is my presentation called The Teacher I Hope to Be. Let's get to this next slide. Okay, the educational theory I chose for the theory that I would like to implement in my classroom, in my future classroom the most, is Albert Bandura's social learning theory. The learning theory aligns most with what I want to be because the social learning theory is the idea that not only is learning about cognitive measure or about behavioral function and the feedback you get from it, but it is also about your peers and the feedback they get from learning. And we learn not only by how our brain digests the information that we are being taught, but by watching other people's brains digest the information they're being taught. Let's get to the next slide. These are the points that I would say I care about or value most in my future classroom. Number one is going to be peers, the focus that this theory has on the relationship with peers and how they are able to teach each other and give constructive criticism to each other, and also learn from each other's mistakes and learn from what each other is learning without having to necessarily do everything hands on. I really value that. I love the idea of learning from each other as much, or if not more, than you're learning from your teacher. The second point that I really value in the social learning theory, Bandura's social learning theory, is the bridge idea. It's referred to as the bridge between behavioral learning and cognitive learning, which basically just means that learning is, yes, scientific. It has a lot to do with your brain, has a lot to do with your memorization tactics and the different receptors in your brain, and it's very scientific in that way. And it is also behavioral responses. So, for instance, if you're getting good responses to the things you're saying or the things you're doing, you'll understand that those are the things that are supposed to be happening in classrooms and in your learning environment. And so, this is kind of a bridge between those two of both and, yes, and. Um, and number three kind of tacks on to the bridge idea. I love the multiple aspects of this theory, of that it is not just one thing. It is not just, for instance, peers. It is not just cognitive learning. It is not just behavioral learning, but it is all three combined into one theory, combined into one educational philosophy, and how that is able to work together and focus on the fact that learning and teaching and those things are not just always going to be so cut and dry as one thing or one object. Um, the difference between this theory and what I want to do in my class. This one is super important to me. A huge focus on his social learning theory was that you learn from other students or your peers' mistakes, which is 100% accurate. I totally understand. And as we've all seen in classrooms and in our personal lives, I'm sure we've all learned from other people's mistakes, from peers' mistakes, and what they got wrong. But I don't want that to be the focus of my classroom. I want the focus to be uplifting each other and learning from their trials and learning from the things that they have learned and taught themselves and what they want you to know. I really would rather focus on learning from each other as like they mini teachers rather than learning from the things they got wrong in front of or around you. So that is going to be the main difference in my classroom. And then, sorry, the practice in my class. So I'm going to start with peer work. I think this has a lot to do with what I was just discussing of what I want the difference to be in my classroom, of how I would love for them to be focused on what their peers are learning and not what their peers are making mistakes on. I would love peer work to be implemented in my classroom as such a big part of the day to day, as I want to discuss things, I want to learn things together as a class, but then I want you to talk with a peer, two peers, three peers, and tell them what you learned, what you gathered from it. And yes, that is how did you learn it? Probably by making mistakes, probably by getting something wrong or assuming something that wasn't correct about the course material in the first place. But I don't want the focus to be on the mistake. I want the focus to be on, let me teach you something I learned through this material so that you can know it. I want it to be more about what they learned and not the mistake they made, because I think that one will help like upbuild them, and also will be super great for their fellow peers to just hear from them and learn from each other rather than me, because you definitely learn better from peers than you do from teachers. At least I have in my experience, and I really hope to implement that in my classroom. Um, Another way I hope to practice this theory in my class is really focus on the different aspects of learners. Like I said earlier, this is a super multifaceted behavioral educational theory. It's not just the behavior and the peer influence, and not just the positive or negative reinforcement you can give someone, but also the way that somebody's brain works and the cognitive aspects of that, and the peer aspect. It is all of those things, and I want that to remind me every day that learning is multifaceted, and learning doesn't just look like one thing, especially when you're having 25 plus students in a classroom. Learning is not always going to look like the same thing for each one of them, and it's definitely not going to look like a picture perfect example for one kid the whole year. It's going to change and it's going to adapt, and they might learn from all kinds of practices, because some things might just be a cognitive aspect of them memorizing it. Some things might be they got a positive reinforcement enough, and some things might be that their peer taught them something. And I hope to really adapt all of those things in my class. And another thing I really hope came through in so far the 2 points of what I want to do in my classroom, but also I'm going to touch on here, is I want a lot of their work to be hands-on. I don't want them sitting a lot. I don't want me sitting a lot. I don't want kids to just have to be doing worksheets. Yes, that is part of class. Yes, that is part of the cognitive aspect of this learning theory. But it also, I want them to be hands-on. I want them to be learning things and growing and practicing other things in those skills and working together on those things to really learn through doing more than just through memorization. I want them to use all of those skills together, and I want the classroom to always feel like a moving, breathing machine of learning from each other, and never just one student sitting at their desk the whole day. And then lastly, how this helps students, how this educational theory helps these students. First of all, motivation. A student's motivation in my classroom, I want it to be self-driven. I don't want me to be the one providing a student's motivation. I can't do that for 25 students, and I definitely can't do that when they move on from my classroom. So I hope that in my classroom is where they learn self-motivation, and I think that's going to come from a lot of peer inclusion and just learning what it's like to work together and work as a unit. I think that motivation comes from, I want to be a part of this unit, and I want to be able to teach my friend, my peer, my fellow classmates something they didn't know before. I want to be the one to do that, and I hope to really instill that in them so that when they move on from my classroom, it doesn't have to be a different peer instilling that motivation in them or their teacher. I want it to be self-driven of they want to be a part of the machine that is what the classroom is. And then confidence and belonging. I feel like this theory is such a good theory for belonging. It's one of the reasons that I relate to it most and want to involve it in my classroom the most, is because I feel like this theory really has that idea of everybody working together, and you learn from each other. You learn from all different sources in your life. You're not just learning from your teacher. And so I do want that to be a major aspect of how my students learn and grow. And I also think the confidence they're going to get is from being able to teach their peers something that they didn't know, and being able to explain it as something they learned, not a mistake they made, but somehow how they grew into a better person, a better student, a better learner. And I want them to be able to do that for each other throughout the whole thing. And then, yeah, just that was my presentation. Thank you guys.